just take it real soon. You know we got what you need, baby, so take it, move along.
I call the 8:24 school committee meeting to order at 6:01. If we all stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Ware, if you take roll.
Yes, Pat Grabosic.
Here.
Colleen Marcus.
Here.
Nancy Farrell.
Here.
Kathy Leverett.
Here.
Bill Garvey.
Here.
You're muted, Bill.
Here.
And Mayor Reichelt.
Here. First, we have a presentation from the CARE Coalition. Superintendent Connor, you're going to start that?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick introduction. CARE Coalition, which stands for Collaborative Accountability Reaches Everyone, is a group that has been in West Springfield for many years. Until I became superintendent, I hadn't been really involved in it, and since doing so, I've really learned to admire the board that is running this. We have a new director as of last year, Ananda Lennox, who's absolute rock star, working with our youth around prevention around drug use. And so as we have been meeting monthly, it just gets me fired up as a former high school administrator and particularly as a disciplinarian, where I was working with a lot of families that unfortunately their child was involved or getting involved in narcotics. This really, it's home for me. And obviously we know the damage it can do to a family. And so I'm very excited to support this work. And I asked them to come join us tonight and just give a quick overview, not only to the committee, but really to everyone watching. And so I thank Ananda for joining us, and I thank Kurt Jonah for joining us, who has done some remarkable things in this area and has become a leader in this area, not only in the region, but far spanning from there as well. So Ananda, I'll turn it over to you, I guess.
All right, thank you, Tim. I know that this meeting is jam-packed with a lot of agenda items, so I'm not going to take up a lot of your time. But I joined the coalition in January, so most of my onboarding has been in this weird Zoom remote land. So it's nice to at least see people's faces, slowly get to know the community. And if there's parents and caregivers listening in, really what I want to do is address you. So I hail from Northampton. I've been doing coalition work for about the past 8 years. And when there was an opportunity to come to West Springfield, I was really excited because I like the work, but it's always nice to have a new community to start doing the work. Coalition work is all about getting an entire community to be on the same page and work collaboratively to help stem the tide of substance use, misuse, and disorders. And one of the big messages I want to share tonight to parents is just that a lot of times we feel disempowered, especially if we do have a child that starts to have trouble with drug or alcohol use. And so the reason that I'm so passionate about prevention is that if we can do everything in our power to start the conversation young, start the education young, reinforce the messages that our health educators are promoting around abstaining from substance use until you're 21 or older, the outcome for our youth is so much brighter than if they do get entrenched in bad habits when they're younger. So that's my big message, is just making sure everybody knows the difference between youth use and adult use. And then beyond that, what I want to let parents know is we've been really active in the background. You know, there hasn't been a lot of coming together for community events lately, but we had our prevention needs assessment survey this past March, where we collect a whole bunch of data from your students. We do 8th, 10th, and 12th graders anonymously. They have an opportunity to join in and do a survey. This year, we tried 6th grade for the first time, and we asked them a bunch of questions about health and wellness. And that gives us a baseline for what are our kids struggling with? What do they seem to have down pat? And I did want to do a quick kudos to parents, because with the social distancing and all of the terrible things we had to deal with in the past year, being home for the most part was a huge protective factor this past year, and use rates across the board were a lot lower. So it was really nice to see some good things come out of this really tough year. Beyond that, we have resource lists that we send home with different ways that parents can go to get help. We do social media, social norm campaigns where we try to look at what the kids are thinking their friends are doing and then correcting any misperceptions, because it's really common if you have 10 friends who are like smoking pot, for example, to think that everybody in your school is, and in fact, the majority aren't. So we try to do campaigns around that. And one of the things that I also wanted to ask parents about, you're going to see communications from us. We usually channel them through the principals, but we're always looking for your feedback and input. So if you see anything that has alennox@WSPS.org or any appeal for surveys, please participate, because every time you do, what it helps us do is actually tailor our programming so that we know what your needs are and how we can address them, and then provide other messaging out there so that families can know that they're not alone in their struggles. And I think a lot of times feeling alone, since the profession I work in is prevention, nature abhors a vacuum. And when people feel isolated and disconnected, that's when they're more likely to use substances, no matter what the age. But if we can keep you feeling like they're engaged and their parents are communicating with them, that's just really good for all of us. I don't want to take up too much time. So the last thing I want to say is, the survey, when you see it, please participate. In the background, we're working with law enforcement to do compliance checks to make sure that our local package stores, restaurants and stuff are carding appropriately to make sure kids aren't getting alcohol that way. And this would be a good time for me now to introduce the founder of the Jack Jonah Foundation and a longstanding CARE Coalition Steering Committee member, Kirk Jonah, who's here to talk to you about a very, very special topic, safe storage of opioid medications, and why everybody needs to be on board with this, and how it'll just take a little bit of thought, but the effort itself is pretty minimal. So thank you, everybody. It's been really nice to meet you remotely.
Thank you, Ananda. Appreciate it. So good evening. Again, my name is Kirk Jonah. I'm a West Springfield resident, and my son Jack passed away 5 years, 4 months, and 18 days ago on April 6, 2016, in his bedroom. I found him in his bedroom from a heroin overdose. And so since that day, my family founded the Jack Jonah Foundation. And briefly, the mission statement on the foundation is to honor those who have passed and their loved ones, educate our young adults in our communities regarding the opioid crisis, and support those who fight addiction every single day. So again, honor, educate, support. And so some data I'd like to share with you before I get into safe storage is, ending the year 2020, we lost 93,331 individuals in the United States from overdoses. 93,331. That's a 30% increase from 2019, which was 72,151. Now that, if just take into thought here, the 93,000 number, that's all of West Springfield, that's all of Agawam, and the majority of Westfield, gone in 1 year, gone. So I have something I'd like to ask of all of you that are listening tonight. It's about safe storage. Over the years, as I've been talking, I've had numerous upon numerous individuals come to me and share their personal stories of addiction. The majority of these individuals that have spoken to me about addiction all started with a prescription opioid drug, whether it's a Vicodin, Percocet, something to manage pain. But the majority of them that I have spoken to, that's what they've shared with me. The CDC says it's 74.7% of the number. So here's what I'm going to ask all of you. When you're done with this meeting, please go into your medicine cabinets, your bathrooms, wherever you store your prescription opioid drugs and lock them up. Lock them up. And then at a later date, safely dispose of them. And in West Springfield, in our police department, we have a medication box that you can dispose of your prescription drugs safely. So just think, everyone that's listening, each and every one of you does this tonight. Think of all the lives you are all saving. All the lives that you are all saving. So, Superintendent, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your support of the Carroll Coalition and the Jack Foundation. But most importantly, your continued support of educating our young adults in our community on addiction and opioids. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. John. I appreciate it. And yeah, just to the community, please take a couple minutes and make sure you're emptying out those cabinets. Teenagers and kids, sometimes even younger than that, take every opportunity they can, and sometimes it's just an opportunity and they don't know what they're doing, but next thing you know, they're into it. So please hear what Kurt is saying and Nanda's saying, and please do that. Let's keep our kids safe, okay? Thank you for joining us, both of you.
Yes, thank you both. And before you go, are there any questions from the committee? Ms. Farrell.
I just wanted to say welcome, Amanda, to West Springfield, and thank you, Amanda and Kirk, for your presentations tonight. We all know that the work you do is hard, but extremely important. And I also think, if I remember this correctly, as when this all started, I think Christine Beaumont was very instrumental in getting the grant for the CARE Coalition to be funded in West Springfield. So I also think Christine should be noted for the work that she's done in terms of this. The beginning, I was involved in this when it was kind of started as a small piece in the school district, and since then it's grown throughout the community. So thank you for your work. We all know it's difficult work, but yet it's extremely important to all people in our community. So hopefully this continues and gets better for all around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Levers?
Yeah, I want to also thank everything you do for our community with the CARE Coalition. But I'd like to ask for people who are having problems, parents, anybody in the community, how do they get support or services or help from the CARE Coalition?
Generally, what we do, since we're prevention and don't provide treatment, if anybody were to call me, I would get them in contact immediately with the most local resources that would be the best able to help them. Sometimes if it's students, it might be in the building going to the adjustment counselor immediately and then having parents pulled in that way. It might be, if it's a more urgent situation, calling BHN crisis right in the midst of it. But I do have an office right in the library. So if somebody just needed to talk and start to get like, how do I have a conversation like this with my kid? I don't really feel empowered. I don't have enough information. He's telling me that this is safe and I don't think it is. We're always a resource to at least talk. And then if it's something that goes above and beyond, like maybe psychiatric care, then we would refer them to those people.
If I could, I would just say that, we're always looking for folks, parents to join with us in this. And it doesn't, generally you think it's a high school thing. Maybe it's a middle school thing. We're looking for elementary parents as well, and starting it as young as possible to set the right foundation.
Can I add one thing before I go?
Yep.
Thank you, Tim, for calling out parents of younger children, because one of the things that we do with the youth when we do have groups is we have a lot of opportunity for leadership training. We have an entity that we work with called CADCA, where when we have the appropriate funding and the right mix of students who have that leadership potential, we actually take them to Washington, D.C., and they meet with our representatives and legislators, talk about how the funding for our work is helping them and their fellow students, have a good school, career. And, it's something that I think a lot of people don't know that we offer. So if you have kids that you think would be interested in this type of work, they want to be part of our steering committee or want to be part of our, having students who provide either mentorship or just helping us with poster campaigns, those are all the kind of students we're looking for. So send them our way.
Kirk, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I would like to. So those who are listening, if you have go to Learn to Cope, Learn, LEARN, the number 2, and Cope. They'll help you immediately. Great organization. That's always where I send anyone who reaches out to me. They'll provide all the guidance and support that you would need. Again, Learn, number 2, Cope, COPE.
Peter?
Thanks, Will. I just wanted to piggyback on what Tim and Ananda were saying. With respect to prevention especially, it's not hopeless when you get to the high school age, but a lot of patterns and behaviors are ingrained at that point. So the earlier we have access and can work with students, the better things are. And if we can start working with elementary students and their parents, then maybe they won't deviate from that path that's more healthy, and we can keep them on a path of wellness. So I would just say the earlier we can get access and we can get students working with Ananda and the group, the care group, the better things are going to be for them.
Anyone else have questions or any additional information? Seeing none, Ananda and Kirk, thank you both very much for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, move on to the next agenda item, which is originally was going to be a vote on universal masking for K through 12. Tim, do you want to talk a bit about the DESE decision today and the impact on us?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor, again. So yes, the Department of Ed had their board meeting this morning at 10 o'clock, had short dialogue, but ultimately voted to give the authority to the commissioner to impose an indoor masking policy requirement for K-12 schools. That includes teachers, faculty, staff, students, and visitors to the campuses. So the plan is, at least from the 30,000 foot mark, we're expecting by Friday some more specifics from the commissioner on this. But they're looking at October, this goes through October 1st, where the commissioner will be monitoring this and either making a decision to continue it, or also he's talking about applying a 80% vaccination standard for those who can be vaccinated for building removal of masks. So a direction that, certainly has had enough bantering around, and there's lots of sides to this without a doubt. At the end of the day, I'm excited for the start of the school year. I'm excited for 5 days a week. I'm excited for the first day of school. I'm excited to see kids wearing those new outfits, those new sneakers, those backpacks. I can't wait to actually get to the schools and be there when they come off the bus and get back to some normalcy. Yes, they will have a mask on their face, but when we reflect back to where we were at this time last year, we have to be optimistic, and having kids in school is a huge step. Now we want to keep them in school, right? So we don't want to go backwards. Whatever we need to do, we're going to put in mitigations. You're going to hear from Christine Beaumont, and I thank Jean Galloway again for being here, and Dr. Callahan for being here, but you're going to hear some of the additional mitigation layers we're putting on. And it's really to reduce as much as possible quarantining and obviously kids or adults getting sick. But we want to keep kids in the schools. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Certainly I can take any questions that the committee has. We're still processing this as it just came out again today. But we have things that we're putting into place. The tents are coming back at each of the schools. So for lunch, the big thing is lunch is en masse, right? Obviously. So we're bringing tents back. We're going to be using those tents at every school. The storm didn't help the reinstallation of those tents in any way, but we'll get those tents up. We're also going to be using alternative spaces more so than we did. So we have the ability to use, for example, at the middle school and the high school, gymnasiums and auditoriums. We're going to take advantage of those spaces as well to separate kids as much as possible. We're going to go and grab lunches so we don't have kids all lined up together waiting for lunches. So we're doing a lot of those things that we think are going to really help with the mitigation of this. And again, hopefully reduce the amount of quarantining. Will we have quarantining? Yes, we absolutely will. And the guidance around this is like a calculus problem in many ways. It's complicated. Every scenario is different. We're going to be putting out a document in the next few days to the parents, trying to explain it. But because the committee has allowed us to add on further staffing in the area of nursing and to bring back our isolation room monitors, we're going to be able to do a lot more testing in the school with authorization of parents. So we'll get into that. So, we'll keep you posted, further notice as we get those details that come from the commissioner, hopefully no later than Friday.
Yeah, and so right now we already have a universal masking policy in place. So I would say until we see something different, or until we see what the mandate from the state is going to be, I would be in favor of just leaving it the way it is for now. We can address it at some later point. I'll let Ms. Oleverist and Ms. Farrell.
Can you tell us any information about the October 1st date? Do we as a community have to follow that, or should we come up with our own community?
So we are under the ruling of DESE and through October 1st. That doesn't mean that prior to October 1st, I would encourage the committee to come together that last week of September and also look at our own data, not just statewide data, but what's our own data saying. And I can't tell you what's going to happen after October 1st, whether they're going to continue this requirement or they're going to put it back on local. Okay. We'll see it when we get to that point.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Farrell?
I was just wondering if the committee should take a vote to accept the recommendation of the commissioner in DESE at this meeting, so it's part of our public record.
I mean, it's up to the committee if they want to make a motion, but it's not a recommendation by the commissioner, it's a mandate. So I don't see a need to vote since we don't really have a choice. But I'll leave it to the committee. Mr. Garvey.
My concern, not so much as the mandate, is more the off-ramp or some of the discussion I heard from the Board of Ed meeting this morning causes me concern. And I truly would not want to be, I want to know what we want to do locally. I think we should make a mark tonight that this is what West Springfield will be doing, regardless of what, let's face it, the commissioner's late to the show. This is not leadership from him. And I will say that some of the minimal comments that I did hear today from the Board of Ed were concerning to me. Yes, we needed leadership a while ago. We didn't get it, and they've been kicking this down the can to locals. I think we do need to vote on this. And I would also like to have some discussion of again, I don't want to be on the last week of September figuring out what to do in a week. I want to be working on that right through. And I think some language around that from us would be helpful as well. Again, I'm not stuck, and I know it's not going to make any difference between now and the next 3 weeks, but I also think it does make a difference as to what we feel here in West Springfield, what we feel as a committee, and what we're going to do as a district, and how we're going to keep our students safe and not look to Malden to do that.
If so, I'll entertain a motion, or we can hear more from the superintendent and Ms. Beaumont.
We do have some slides, but it's really just about on the mitigation and testing. So I don't think it pertains necessarily to the vote at this time. It's just what we're going to be doing anyhow.
Well, why don't we hear from that first? Ms. Beaumont?
So, Dr. Perone, would you mind putting the slides up for Mrs. Beaumont?
What? What?
Mr. Perone, not Ms. Ware.
Mr. Connor, when I go to share the screen, it's saying it's been disabled by the host.
All right, I got it.
That's you, Tim.
Yep. There we go.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk expand a little bit more about how testing is used among our other mitigation strategies in the schools for 21-22. So there are 3 types of testing being offered this year, and we have applied and been accepted to offer all 3 types. The first is the routine COVID safety checks that you're used to hearing called pool testing, and the other 2 are diagnostic types for individuals with symptoms and for close contacts to the test and stay that we've heard a little bit about. All these forms of testing are free of charge. They're optional opt-in for parents. Parents have to opt in and give consent in order for their student to participate, and this can be done electronically, and it can be done at any time. So the routine COVID safety checks, formerly known as pool testing, are really offered to prevent the undetected spread of the virus among students who aren't showing symptoms at school. Each week, we would have the students self-swab if they're able to and observed by health services staff to do 2 nasal swabs or swabbed if they needed assistance from health services. And we'll collect 2 samples. The first swab will go into a pool test, a larger tube that will hold 10 samples. And the second swab is put into an individual tube. Initially, a PCR test is performed on the group tube. And if if the whole group tests negative, that PCR test comes out negative, all individuals in the group are presumed negative and just remain in school. If anyone in the group tests positive, they take that second swab that they already have there at the lab and they do individual testing on all the second swabs that were in that sample. And we'll know pretty quickly without having to come back and do follow-up testing in the building if there are who any positive cases are in that pool. The second type of testing we're going to offer is the diagnostic symptomatic testing. This is done when students come to school and develop symptoms at school. Anyone who's experiencing symptoms at home should not go to school, but instead call the nurse for some guidance. And this type of testing, again, is a shallow nasal swab, and we can do a rapid Binax Now antigen test at school. These are the symptoms that Desi has updated this list on the 13th. Any in the first 5, the fever, difficulty breathing, shortness of breath, new loss of taste or smell, muscle or body aches, and a cough not due to another known cause like a chronic cough. Any of those 5 that develop, we would do the Binax Now antigen test. And regardless of whether it's positive or negative, that student would go home because these are considered the very classic, sort of on the #1 list for DESI. These symptoms that are in the grouping of the next 5 that starts with sore throat, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, headache, fatigue, nasal congestion, or runny nose. Last year, we had students develop some of these symptoms on their own. And now that we have the Binax Now antigen test, if we have a student who has one of these symptoms or has it temporarily, we no longer have to send them home. We can first do that test. If the test is negative and they have just one of these symptoms from the second grouping, they can stay in school. If the test is positive, they would be dismissed as a positive. Anyone that we kept in school, if they were negative initially and they continued to have symptoms, we would repeat that test in a couple of days. The test and stay, the third option is for close contacts, and these are only for individuals exposed at school. And this is a shallow nasal swab sample again. We do the Binax Now rapid antigen test or other approved test. So far from what I've heard, it's going to be the Binax Now. And the tests are administered daily at this, from the first day of exposure for at least 5 consecutive school days, or if there's a weekend or holiday in there, it would be when they return. So it could be past day 5. And as long as these individuals who are close contacts in the school setting remain asymptomatic, wear a mask, and remain 3 feet apart when unmasked, such as at lunch, they can stay in school. Any student who tests positive at any point must remain at home for 10 days from the onset of symptoms or the positive test, whichever happens first, and their symptoms have to improve, and they have to be fever-free for 24 hours without the use of medication before they can return to school. So these students who test positive would get cleared by the health department or the school nurse to return to school. Let's see. These protocols for responding for how we manage symptoms, contacts, cases at school have been updated for this school year. And the factors that impact how we manage every scenario there's several things that can impact that. Number one is vaccination status. So vaccinated individuals who remain without symptoms are often exempt from many of the protocols. Someone who's symptomatic versus asymptomatic, that will impact it. If you've got someone who's asymptomatic and they're a close contact and they test negative one day and they're remaining in school, as soon as they develop symptoms, that changes how we manage that case. Close contact, where it occurs, whether it's in or out of school. This is only for close contacts in the school setting. This isn't for close contact anywhere else. And mask wearing. If individuals are wearing their masks during this contact at school and they're distancing at 3 feet, then we can implement the test and stay. If folks aren't masked and if they're closer than 3 feet, we cannot use the test and stay. And anyone who's had COVID-19 in the last 90 days and they're completely resolved and well and returned to the community, they would be exempt from testing and quarantine as well. Yeah, I think that's it.
So as you can tell, there's a lot of moving parts to this, and scenarios are going to impact decisions and things like that. I want to thank Christine and the nursing staff for everything in sorting through all these protocols. And folks need to know that they're not just pulling this out of the air and implementing it the way they want. They're using the guidance provided. And so, unfortunately, if we get those calls, we have to understand that.
Questions from the committee, Ms. Farrell?
Just wondering on the pool testing, how many students do we anticipate testing? I know it's up to parents if they sign up to it and it's optional for parents, but like how many do you anticipate using the pool testing for? I'm assuming if they did it, it would be, I don't know, once a week, or would all students who agree to it be once a week? What does that look like?
Sure. So that's for students or staff. It could even be the bus driving staff. Anyone who's coming into the school building as a staff or student who signs up, who wants to enroll, will test each week, unless they were to opt out for some reason. As far as how many, we can test as many as will sign up. This is recommended for unvaccinated individuals, but if vaccinated individuals would like to sign up, they can as well. And there's no limit. I believe this is something that over time we can probably ramp up the participation for. Once people maybe see how it's going and have a better understanding, we might have some more students willing to participate.
Just to follow up on the results, do they don't send back and say someone in this pool is positive. They would send back who is the positive person in that pool. So students who are in that pool and not tested positive would not have to stay home until the results came back from the pool.
No, I'm not sure if there would be sort of a lag time between when we heard there was a positive pool and we knew who it was, because it might depend on when they're running the tests. You know, if it were later in the evening, we might just know everything the next day. So we'll have to kind of see what the timing is. It might depend on when the company picks up the tests, when they run them. I don't anticipate having anyone in a pool stay home unless we know that their individual test is positive.
Ms. Marcus?
My question kind of piggybacks off of Nancy's, and I think you probably answered it a little bit, Christine, in that how long or how fast are those test results coming back to us?
So we are reliant on the company, the courier service, and then the lab for how much they're doing. They told us if we get the tests to them early in the day, we get a quicker turnaround. But I did hear from some districts who participated towards the end of last year that, you know, despite all the pools being ready to be picked up at 10 o'clock in the morning, they weren't picked up until 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
And then a second question outside of that, I know you had mentioned the opt-in is electronic for parents to sign up. Is it in different languages so that we can provide it to all of our families?
We're going to have to work with the company CIC to see if, I'm sure we can put it into our electronic signature format, seamless docs, and then transfer, even if we had to print that out and get it to them. I'm sure we can work with that.
Perfect, thank you.
Ms. Marcus?
First, I just wanted to thank Dr. Callahan for being here. I'm sure there are many parents in the audience who not only know Dr. Callahan as their pediatrician, but would love to hear his thoughts on masking and other mitigation strategies to keep our students safe at school. So I don't know, Dr. Callahan, if you'd add your input here.
Okay, so I basically recommend what's going on with the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics. They talk about a lot of different things. First, getting people vaccinated. I don't think I'm gonna say anything new here, but getting people vaccinated is really important. We may have, because of this new variant, have to get up to 80% of people vaccinated in order to kind of develop the herd immunity that's so important. In the meantime, we have a lot of people who can't be vaccinated. Most of our kids in elementary and middle school. And I've talked to Christine, I don't think very many, there's maybe not, I don't know if it's quite a majority in the high school of kids have been vaccinated either. So there's a lot of people who can spread it around. If we're going to keep people in school, which the American Academy feels we need to keep people in school and safe, we need to mask. There's no way around it. And we can't get rid of the masks. The masks are the way to get us to get to the vaccines, finally get rid of the masks. They talk about social distancing and ventilation and sanitation, all very important factors that we need to do. I like the fact that there's testing. The testing looks very good for this, and thank you, Christine, for doing that work. The testing program looks very good in order to try to minimize the quarantine. The test and stay looks like a reasonable thing to do. We certainly had a lot of people coming in with they were dizzy in the morning. Okay, they had a tummy ache for an hour, and they came in. It'd be nice to test those kids, so they wouldn't have to make a visit to us and then wait for a day for the PCR test to come back. That would certainly be nice. I'm kind of concerned a little bit about this. I'm not on the committee. I don't make the votes. I don't have to deal with anybody in the town, okay, except as a pediatrician. So I mean, we're going to have this DESI thing going on till October 1st. And I agree with Mr. Garvey that basically we need to be kind of really keeping our eye on the ball and not just kind of relax. And maybe, I don't know whether it would be, would it be even possible for the committee to vote on this tonight and to actually commit to a mask mandate even longer than October 1st. I think it's going to be needed. I can't see, this COVID stuff is not going to be decreasing in the next few weeks. Okay, it's probably going to be getting more. But that's just kind of my opinion. I don't know on the ins and outs of the politics. I was kind of glad to see what DESI did, but also I was kind of a little bit, not unglad, but it kind of paralyzed everybody a little bit. I think people were kind of had a thought what they were going to do today, but now they have to kind of put it off. That's all. I don't know if anybody has any questions about anything in particular I can help with. Yes, Mr. Garvey.
And I don't even know if how to say this question correctly, but when we look at like the test and stay or the pool testing, obviously the more students and staff that participate, the better. But is there a level there that those results become more indicative of what's going on in a school or in the community?
Well, I guess the obviously thing is if you have small numbers, it's going to tend to skew everything. You'll get, if you only have 30 or 40 people participating, you're going to probably have a lot less good idea of what's going on than if you have, several hundred people participating. I think the information won't be as good. It will work best if everybody participates, but certainly you probably need more than, I think to have a real good thing, you probably need more than 50% to participate, hopefully to make it worthwhile. I'm not saying you can't get information out of 50 or 60 people. It'll help those individuals, but it's not going to probably give you an idea really what's going on in the school. Yeah.
And I don't know if this is for Christine or you, Doctor. So if a student chooses not to participate in testing, then would all those scenarios be 10-day quarantines?
Yeah. Let me see if I get this right, Christine. Okay. Basically, if you're especially if you're symptomatic and you don't refuse the test, usually it's okay. You don't have to test, but you're going to go in isolation for 10 days. Okay. And just assume you have it. Okay. You don't have to test, but you can't stay in school if you're symptomatic. I don't know what happens with the test and stay if they refuse. Do you know what goes on with that, Christine? I'm not sure as much about that.
Yeah, the test and stay would only apply if somebody was participating in that program, and parents could choose, which of the three or all three. We certainly hope that they'll, choose to participate in all three. Mm-hmm. But if you're not participating in test and stay, you're certainly not eligible for it, and you'd go home for the quarantine.
Okay.
Which could be.
Okay. So if you're a kid with test and stay, is usually the kids that have like the single symptoms, nausea, congestion, right?
That would be the symptomatic. Other diagnostic. The test and stay is for the in-school close contacts.
Got it. Sorry.
So anyone who wasn't participating would have two options. They would have to go home for 7 days, and if they didn't develop any symptoms and had a test on or after day 5, they could return on day 8. Otherwise, it would be the longer quarantine.
And honestly, I think my point with all this is how important it is for folks to I could urge parents to participate in this, because again, we need kids in school. We need kids in school safely, and if they're going to stay there, we need this kind of participation, because if kids start missing school at 7 and 10 days at a clip, before we know it, we're going to be in a precarious situation. So again, I look at it kind of like mask wearing. We do it for ourselves and we do it for others. So as a community, as a school community, if we can pledge to participate in this testing, I think our school year will be so much better.
I certainly think you could put it this way. This is a way of keeping your kids and other kids in school okay? You know, and to make sure who's needs to stay out stays out, and who doesn't need to stay out can stay. And that would be a benefit to everybody. Okay. Yes, Ms. Marcus.
I don't know even know if it's so much, it's not really a question as it is a statement. You know, last year when we went back to school, there was a remote option. There is no remote option this year. So all students are back in school. So we have, you know, some classes of 24 students, 25 students. It is essential, as Bill said, that everybody opt into the testing, that everybody, I mean, the masking is a mandate, but and the 3-foot requirement. DESE is not requiring 3 feet of distancing, but we should be mandating 3 feet of distancing, particularly when they're eating. But
yeah, I guess one thing I question about the 3 feet. My wife teaches 3rd grade in Springfield, and they're supposed to have 3 feet, and she figured it out pretty good for 18 kids in the class, and she has 20 kids, and she barely figured it out for the 20 kids. Somehow she figured it out. She had to take all her desk out, everything else was extra in the room out. So I don't know what they're going to do with 24 kids. I'm not sure how big the classroom is, but it's a very difficult thing technically, having talked to my wife, who's I consider an expert on 3-foot distancing.
Oh, and I understand how difficult it is, but I think we need to do everything in our power to try to ensure that that happens. Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly.
Christine, just a clarification on the test and stay. That's only if it's transmitted in the school, not if you're if sleepover or something like that. Is that correct?
Right. It's if you're a close contact to a positive case in school only, not at home or on a sleepover or outside of school.
Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Well,
Mr. Garvey?
And again, I'm not saying we have to do this tonight, but the one thing I know parents will be expecting is some of the mitigation things that we had from last year. I'm not saying we need to list them all out this evening, but will those be shared with parents soon, or is?
Yeah, they will. Many of the mitigation factors that we had or practices are back into play. And so the cleaning, the PPEs, the cleaning protocols are all going to be the same as we were back in the spring. We're adding in additional spaces for eating at the middle and high to separate them further. We're continuing on with the grab and go bags, as I mentioned. Sometimes a favorite, sometimes not a favorite. But again, it allows us to prepare those ahead of time and not have kids waiting in line as well. You know, the big thing, as we've been talking about, that we're adding that we didn't have is this testing, and that's huge for us. So the masking and the testing are 2 really important things for us. Regarding the busing, talking with the bus company, they will have the windows cracked, which is part of the guidance. Students, both in sports, clubs, and regular transportation, vans, all are required to keep their masks on. And that was prior to even today's announcement. But those kids, and correct me if I'm wrong, Christine, those kids aren't considered a close contact in that situation. Is that correct?
As long as the bus windows remain open and students are masked, there are no close contacts, no contact tracing on the bus.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Ms. Farrell?
So I agree with everything that's said tonight, but I think that one of the problems that we have is all of this is so new with the information from DESE that it's not even sort of all finalized yet. We don't have actually like everything that's going to happen. So I just think if tonight we vote and accept the recommendations of DESE, and then we work with our administration at the next meeting and the following meeting, and I mean, if necessary, have a workshop to keep us informed on what's going on in the committee, would work for me. So I'm going to make a motion to accept the commissioner and DESE's policy requiring masking, indoor masking, as approved on August 24th, 2021 at the Board of Education meeting.
So a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing Mr. Garvey.
You almost got there. Nancy, and I do think I understand. So as far as like, if we wanted to add something about, an off-ramp or continuing longer than October 1st, you're saying in the next week or two, we should address that then with more information?
Yeah, because my feeling is at this point, we haven't opened schools. We don't really know how many of our students are going to opt into the testing. So I think once we had more information and to see how the start of school went, then we could change the motion if necessary.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns before we take a vote? Seeing none, Ms. Ware, if you take the roll.
Yes, Pat Garvey.
Who?
Pat Gabarsik, yes.
I'm sorry, Garbosic. That was weird. Colleen Marcus,
Yes.
Nancy Farrell,
Yes.
Jennifer Marcus,
Yes.
Kathy Leverett,
Yes.
Bill Garvey,
Yes.
and Mayor Reichelt.
Yes. Thank you, Superintendent Connor, and thank you, Dr. Callahan and Christine. We appreciate it. And if the committee, if individual members do have questions or concerns about anything, just reach out to the superintendent and just copy me on any emails. Appreciate it. Move on to the business manager's report. We have 3 items to vote on.
Yeah, actually, probably 4 motions. So most of these relate to what we were talking about. The first item is the district is requesting up to 5 elementary academic support staff to assist with students impacted by school-related COVID absences.
Where is this money coming from?
This is coming from the ESSER fund, so it is all grant funded.
For the motion? Ms. Farrell?
Motion to approve up to 5 FTE staff working at elementary schools supporting students. The pay rate would be 90% of the bachelor's step 1 unit A hourly rate. These positions are for the school year 21-22 only, and they're ESSER grant funded.
Second.
A motion and a second. How did the subcommittee vote?
The subcommittee voted unanimous affirmative in favor of this. Mr. Connor gave us some information about the positions working with the elementary schools. And as so many other things during this COVID are not clearly defined and constantly changing, these staff members would be able to help students who are quarantined at home, but since there is no remote learning, it will not be the same as last year for students who are quarantined. So it's more of a check-in and to make sure that they are on task with their work. We definitely see it as a necessary positions in the district.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Garvey?
Yeah, again, I just state I'm thrilled that we put this forward. One of my biggest concerns is the commissioner's refusal for remote education. I know there's families out there that are struggling with the decision tonight of what to do with their children for whatever reason. I don't know how we can uphold a free and appropriate public education for people when we don't have remote during a worldwide pandemic. That aside, I'm thrilled to see West Springfield Public Schools put something like this forward because there will be quarantines, I'm sure, and to have some kind of support for our students, I think is wonderful. And again, Superintendent Connor going above and beyond for this. I think this is a great idea. My only downside would be I'd like to see more of them, but I think this is a great start. So thank you for that.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Ware, if you take the roll.
Yes, Bill Garvey,
Yes.
Kathy Leverett,
Yes.
Jennifer Marcus,
Yes.
Nancy Farrell,
Yes.
Colleen Marcus,
Yes.
and Mayor Reichelt, and Pat Garbosic.
Next item, Ms. Hunter. Ms. Hunter, the next item.
Yes, so the next item is related to isolation room staffing. We only had them approved for last year, so this is the renewal for up to 9 isolation room monitors, 1 at each building, to be funded again through the recovery grant funds.
And if I could just jump in there, Mayor, these positions are obviously were essential last year, but they're also going to morph into something more this year if we have a large population of people who are willing to test. These people will be helping out with the testing protocol.
Ms. Farrell.
Motion to approve the isolation room staff up to 9, 1 at each building at $25 per hour, ESSER grant funded, and the budget subcommittee voted unanimous affirmative.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Ms. Farrell.
These positions are for the school year 21-22.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Ware, if you take roll.
Pat Grabasic,
Yes.
Colleen Marcus,
Yes.
Nancy Farrell,
Yes.
Jennifer Marcus,
Yes.
Kathy Olevers,
Yes.
Bill Garvey,
Yes.
Mayor Reichelt.
Yes.
And the next one is for a floating nurse for the district. This is in addition to the COVID support nurse. And again, this is only temporary for this year. And it's funded again through the recovery funds.
If I could just jump on this and explain it a little bit more. This is also another additional support for our nursing staff. In normal years, when a nurse is absent, we do struggle to get someone into that building. Obviously, with everything we're going to be dealing with, hopefully with the amount of testing, we want to make sure that the buildings are always covered to full capacity.
Ms. Farrell.
Motion to approve a floating nurse full-time for the school year 21-22 only, and this is ESSER grant funded. Budget subcommittee voted unanimous affirmative.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Ware, if you take roll.
Pat Grabasic,
Yes.
Colleen Marcus,
Yes.
Nancy Farrell,
Yes.
Jennifer Marcus,
Yes.
Kathy Olevers,
Yes.
Bill Garvey,
Yes.
and Mayor Reichelt.
Yes. Last item, Ms. Hunter.
Last item is approval of the setup of a student activity club at the middle school called the Amazing Shake. It's a formality. We have to get school committee approval for the setup of the club.
Ms. Farrell.
Motion to approve the middle school Amazing Shake Club. It's a new student activity account.
Second.
Did the budget sub vote on this?
Yes, the budget subcommittee voted unanimous affirmative. Sorry, I didn't mention it.
No worries. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Ware, if you take roll.
Pat Grabasic,
Yes.
Colleen Marcus,
Yes.
Nancy Farrell,
Yes.
Jennifer Marcus,
Yes.
Kathy Olevers,
Yes.
Bill Garvey,
Yes.
and Mayor Reichelt.
Yes. Old business, more policy updates. Ms. Olevers, do you want to take these all at once too, or?
I think we
Defer to
can.
you. Okay.
They're only updated with new MGL references. There's really not many changes. You tell me.
The school year policy calendar, is that 1 of 5? Or are we gonna only do it once this year?
Once.
No one got that joke from last year. All right.
We're
not in person.
We're done.
All right, we'll take it all at once. I'll entertain a motion, Ms. Olevers.
Make a motion to approve policies BE, policy BEDA, policy IC/ICA, policy ID, policy IHB, policy IHBA, policy IHBAE, policy JIH, and policy JIHR.
Second,
A motion and a second. I know these are all in the packet, and there are not that many changes. As Ms. Lever's pointed out, these are all also on the website as well, if there are questions from the public that would like to view them. With a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Ware, if you take roll.
Pat Garbosick,
yes.
Kelly Marcus,
Yes.
Nancy Farrell,
Yes.
Kathy Levers,
Yes.
Jennifer Marcus,
Yes.
Bill Garvey,
Yes.
and Mayor Reichelt.
Yes. That does it for the meeting. Our next scheduled school committee meeting is September 14th at 7 p.m. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Without opposition, we are adjourned. Thank you and have a good evening.